Have you ever wondered why some people dominate a room without saying a single word? Why their silence speaks louder than the loudest voice? Why their mere presence feels like intelligence, authority, and power combined? This is not an accident. This is strategy. And no one understood it better than the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche taught that true power isn't about endless words, arguments, or debates. It's about something deeper: presence, self-mastery, and the ability to see through others without revealing yourself. In this 3-part journey, you'll discover how to outsmart anyone without saying a word, using Nietzsche's radical philosophy of power, silence, and self-overcoming. So let's begin with part 1.1, Nietzsche's warning about words. Nietzsche once wrote, "All great things must first wear terrifying and monstrous masks in order to inscribe themselves on the hearts of humanity." What did he mean? That words are cheap, words can deceive, but presence, the energy you radiate, the silence you command, that is undeniable. In fact, Nietzsche constantly warned about the weakness of those who rely too much on talk. He believed the strongest individuals, the true free spirits, prove themselves through actions, discipline, and being, not through endless speeches. Think about it. The loudest person in the room is rarely the most intelligent. The one who needs to explain himself constantly is rarely respected. But the one who says little, and yet is unshakably confident, that is the person everyone notices. Nietzsche called this the will to power, not just political or social power, but the inner strength to command yourself, and in turn, command others. 2. The will to power, outsmarting without words. For Nietzsche, the deepest human drive wasn't survival, comfort, or even happiness. It was power, the drive to grow, expand, and overcome. Now here's the secret: the person who talks less often has more power. Why? Because silence forces others to fill the space. When you refuse to explain, people wonder what you're thinking. When you don't react, they reveal themselves while you reveal nothing. That's outsmarting without effort. Imagine two people in an argument. One gets emotional, shouting, explaining, defending. The other sits calmly, observing, barely speaking. Who looks stronger? Who looks wiser? Nietzsche would say, the one in control of his silence is the one with true power. 3. Presence, the silent weapon. Nietzsche believed that real intelligence radiates through presence, not chatter. Your presence is a weapon. It's built through discipline, posture, gaze, and energy. A person with strong presence doesn't need to outtalk anyone. They outshine them. Think of great leaders, warriors, and thinkers throughout history. Many were known not for their words, but for the weight of their silence. A single glance, a pause before speaking, the decision to say nothing at all. These moments carry more authority than hours of conversation. Nietzsche would argue, your silence terrifies the mediocre, because it cannot be controlled. 4. Why words are overrated. Let's be honest, most arguments don't change minds. Most debates are just noise, and Nietzsche despised noise. He saw society as full of herd animals, people who follow trends, repeat empty phrases, and hide behind socially approved opinions. The true individual, Nietzsche's free spirit, doesn't waste time proving himself to the herd. He observes, calculates, and acts when necessary, but mostly, he lets others expose their weakness through their own words. This is how you outsmart without effort, by refusing to play their game. 5. Storytelling example. The silent outsmarting. Picture this: a group of executives sit around a long boardroom table. Everyone is talking, pitching, debating. The air is full of noise. At the end of the table sits a man who says almost nothing. He listens, observes, takes notes. When the meeting ends, everyone looks at him. His silence has made them curious, even nervous. He finally speaks one short sentence, and because he's been quiet all along, his words hit like thunder. That man has outsmarted the entire room, not by talking more, but by talking less. Nietzsche would call this the power of restraint. Proof that true strength lies in self-mastery. 6. Silence as a test of strength. Most people can't handle silence. They rush to fill it with words, jokes, or explanations. Why? Because silence exposes them. But the one who can sit in silence, calm and unmoved, reveals inner mastery. Nietzsche believed that strength is not shown in noise but in stillness. The one who can endure silence without fear has already won. This is why monks, warriors, and philosophers throughout history have practiced silence as a discipline. It sharpens the mind, strengthens the will, and intimidates the weak. 7. Outsmarting through observation. Silence is not passive, it's active. When you stay quiet, you watch others reveal themselves. Their body language, their words, their contradictions, all become visible. Nietzsche taught that most people are blind to their own motives, but the observer, the silent one, sees clearly, and that clarity is the ultimate way to outsmart anyone, because while they are trying to impress, you are gathering information. While they are distracted by noise, you are reading the truth. The superiority of the few. Nietzsche divided humanity into two types, the herd and the higher individual. The herd talks endlessly, seeking approval. The higher individual speaks rarely, but when he does, it shifts reality. To Nietzsche, this was not arrogance but fact. Most people live unconsciously, while only a few dare to rise above. So how do you outsmart anyone without words? By living as one of the few, the ones who are disciplined enough to stay silent, to observe, to act with precision instead of noise. 9. Modern application. Think about how this applies today. In relationships, silence during conflict often gives you more control than shouting. In business, restraint in meetings makes your contributions more valuable. In social life, being the one who listens more than speaks makes you appear wise, mysterious, and respected. This isn't manipulation, it's mastery. It's what Nietzsche meant when he said, "The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly." The one who doesn't need to prove himself will always soar higher. Ending teaser for part 2. So in part 1, we've uncovered the foundation of Nietzsche's silent strategy. The weakness of words, the will to power expressed through silence, presence as a weapon and observation as intelligence. But this is only the beginning. In part 2, we'll explore Nietzsche's deeper philosophy, how to project dominance without words, how to break free from herd mentality, and how to live with such authenticity that silence itself becomes your ultimate weapon. Stay tuned, the real transformation is just beginning. In part 1, we discovered Nietzsche's secret: silence, presence, and observation can outsmart even the loudest and most confident voices. But Nietzsche didn't stop there. He believed the world is divided into two kinds of people: those who follow, and those who lead, those who talk endlessly, and those who rise above the noise. In this part, we'll uncover Nietzsche's radical insights into mastery, detachment, and authenticity, and how they allow you to project dominance without saying a single word. 1. Master morality versus slave morality. Nietzsche famously distinguished between master morality and slave morality. Slave morality belongs to the herd. It values obedience, safety, humility, and constant explanation. It fears judgment, so it seeks approval through words. Master morality belongs to the higher individual. It values strength, independence, and self-definition. It does not beg for approval, and it does not explain itself. Now here's the key: silence is a master's tool. When you don't rush to justify yourself, when you don't scramble to explain every action, you radiate power. You are telling the world, without saying it, "I define myself. I do not need your permission." This is why Nietzsche admired individuals who lived boldly, without apology. They didn't need to talk others into respecting them. Their very existence demanded respect. 2. Body language. The silent language of power. Nietzsche never wrote a manual on body language, but his philosophy makes it clear. The body speaks louder than words. Your posture, your gaze, your stillness, these reveal more than 1,000 arguments. Consider this: the person who slouches, fidgets, or avoids eye contact screams insecurity without saying a word. The person who stands tall, breathes calmly, and maintains a steady gaze radiates authority. Even in silence, Nietzsche believed the body is an expression of the soul. If you cultivate discipline, strength, and self-respect, your body will project it automatically. And here's the secret: people instinctively respond to this silent power. You outsmart them not through arguments, but through presence. 3. The power of restraint. Most people reveal too much. They share their plans, expose their emotions, and give away their weaknesses with constant talking. But Nietzsche's higher individual practices restraint. He doesn't rush to speak. He doesn't explain unless it's necessary. And in that restraint lies his advantage. Think of a chess player. The amateur rushes his moves, nervous and reactive. The master waits, patient and calm, forcing the opponent to reveal everything first. That's the same principle here. Silence is your patience. Restraint is your strategy. You let others expose themselves, while you keep your hand hidden. 4. Detachment. Outsmarting through indifference. One of Nietzsche's sharpest observations was that the person who needs less always has more power. When you are desperate to win an argument, to prove yourself, or to be liked, you've already lost. The other person controls you through your need. But when you are detached, when you don't need their approval, their validation, or even their understanding, you become untouchable. Silence communicates this better than words ever could. Imagine being insulted and responding with nothing. No defense, no anger, just calm presence. That silence says, Your opinion is irrelevant to my worth, and that is how you outsmart them, not by fighting, but by refusing to play their game. 5. Become who you are. Authenticity as silent power. Nietzsche's most famous command was simple: become who you are. What does that mean? It means stop living as a copy, stop imitating the herd, stop hiding behind masks. Most people talk so much because they are insecure about who they are. They try to convince others, and themselves, that they matter. But the one who has become authentic, who knows himself deeply, doesn't need to prove it. His silence isn't weakness, it's confidence. Authenticity itself is power. It cannot be faked, and when you embody it, people sense it instantly. You outsmart without speaking because your very being communicates. Strength. 6. Story example. The silent commander. Let's take a story from history. A military commander walks into a tent where his officers are arguing over strategy. Everyone is shouting, offering plans, debating endlessly. The commander listens in silence. He says nothing for a long time. Then, with a single gesture, a hand placed on the map, he ends the debate. No speech, no long explanation, just presence and action. The silence was his weapon. His calmness, his detachment from noise, forced everyone else to recognize his authority. Nietzsche would say, this is the difference between a master and the herd. 7. Silence as mystery and authority. People are terrified of the unknown, and nothing creates mystery faster than silence. When you stay quiet, people begin to wonder, what are you thinking? Why aren't you reacting? What do you know that I don't? Their curiosity gives you psychological control. You become the center of attention without chasing it. Nietzsche often wrote about the importance of style, mystery, and distance in the life of a higher individual. He knew that too much exposure destroys authority, but silence protects it. 8. Outsmarting the herd mentality. Nietzsche despised conformity. He believed most people were last men, content with comfort, mediocrity, and sameness. How do you outsmart such a herd? By refusing to join their noise. When everyone is gossiping, you stay silent. When everyone is arguing, you observe. When everyone is desperate to prove themselves, you remain calm. This refusal to join the herd is itself an act of intelligence. It separates you, elevates you, and forces others to notice you. 9. The silent challenge. Try this in your own life. The next time someone tries to bait you into an argument, don't respond. Hold silence. Watch how uncomfortable they become. Watch how they reveal more, get frustrated, and lose control. This is Nietzsche's strategy in action. By saying nothing, you force the other to wrestle with themselves. You've already outsmarted them. Ending. Teaser. For part 3. So in part 2, we've seen how Nietzsche's philosophy sharpens the art of silence, master versus slave morality, body language and presence, the power of restraint, detachment, and authenticity, silence as mystery and authority. But we're not done yet. In part 3, we'll unlock Nietzsche's ultimate vision, how to rise above all manipulation, how to embody the Übermensch, and how to live so powerfully that silence itself makes you unstoppable. Because the greatest way to outsmart anyone is not to beat them at their game, but to rise to a level they can't even reach. In the first 2 parts of this series, we uncovered Friedrich Nietzsche's genius. In part 1, we learned that silence, awareness, and presence can outmaneuver the loudest voices. In part 2, we discovered the power of restraint, detachment, and authenticity, how to project dominance without saying a single word. Now, in part 3, we'll enter the highest level of Nietzsche's philosophy, the Übermensch, the individual who rises above manipulation, beyond the herd, and lives with such intensity that silence itself becomes a weapon of unstoppable influence. If you thought silence was powerful before, wait until you see what it becomes when combined with Nietzsche's ultimate vision. 1. The Übermensch, rising above the herd. Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, Overman or Superman, was not about comic book powers. It was about becoming an individual so authentic, so self-created, that no herd mentality, no insult, no manipulation could touch them. The Übermensch doesn't need to explain himself. He doesn't need to argue, to shout, or to convince. He lives by his own values, and that silent certainty outsmarts everyone who depends on approval from the crowd. Think of it this way. Most people live as echoes, but the Übermensch lives as a voice. Most people need the herd to validate them, but the Übermensch validates himself. And the greatest proof of this? His silence. The Übermensch doesn't fight over scraps of opinion. He creates new worlds of meaning. 2. Outsmarting through self-mastery. Nietzsche taught that to outsmart others, you must first outsmart yourself. Your impulses, your anger, your need to be understood. These are traps. If you can't master them, you'll always be controlled by others. When someone insults you and you lash out, They've controlled you. When someone doubts you and you over-explain, they've controlled you. When someone withholds approval and you beg for it, they've controlled you. But when you master yourself, your silence, your restraint, your detachment, you flip the game. You cannot be provoked. You cannot be pulled. You cannot be moved by trivial manipulation. And that is the essence of Nietzsche's higher man, to become unshakable. 3. The eternal return. Living as if forever. One of Nietzsche's deepest ideas was the eternal return. Imagine this: every action, every moment, will repeat for eternity. Would you live differently if you knew you had to repeat the same life again and again? The weak panic at this thought, but the strong embrace it. Now here's the silent power in this idea. When you live as if every choice is eternal, you stop wasting energy on meaningless arguments. You stop chasing approval. You stop defending yourself endlessly. You begin to act with weight, presence, and certainty. And this, in silence, outsmarts everyone who lives carelessly, cheaply, and without depth. 4. Outsmarting manipulators with radical independence. Manipulators feed on dependence. They want you to need them for approval, validation, or belonging. But Nietzsche's higher individual doesn't need anyone to tell him who he is. His independence is his greatest shield. When someone tries to provoke you and you stay silent, you deny them the satisfaction. When someone tries to guilt you and you simply walk away, you dissolve their power. When someone tries to control you with promises of approval and you don't care, you've already won. This is how silence becomes a sword. You don't fight their game, you refuse to play it. And in refusing, you reveal just how small their power really was. 5. The noble silence versus the coward's silence. Nietzsche warned that not all silence is equal. There is a silence born of fear, and a silence born of strength. The coward's silence, shrinking back, avoiding conflict, too afraid to speak. The noble silence, standing tall, refusing to waste words, too powerful to argue. Outsmarting others requires the noble kind. It's not about hiding, it's about choosing not to engage in triviality. When your silence carries confidence, people feel it. They know you could speak, you could fight, you could argue, but you don't. And that self-restraint is a silent declaration of superiority. 6. The psychology of mystery. Why silence wins. Human beings crave certainty. They want to know what you're thinking, where you stand, how you feel. When you stay silent, you create mystery. And mystery always holds power. The more you reveal, the less power you have. The less you reveal, the more people imagine about you. Nietzsche knew that too much exposure weakens authority. By keeping distance, by holding silence, you force others to project their own fears and desires onto you. They battle shadows, while you remain untouchable. This is not manipulation in the cheap sense. It's simply the natural gravity of presence. 7. Example story. The silent philosopher. Imagine a crowded debate hall. Scholars argue endlessly, drowning each other in words. In the corner, one man sits silently, watching. He doesn't interrupt, doesn't defend, doesn't compete. At the end, when asked for his opinion, he simply smiles and leaves. What happens? The audience forgets the endless arguments, but they remember the silent man. They wonder, what did he think? Why didn't he speak? What did he know that we didn't? His silence outsmarted all their speeches. Nietzsche would say, true power is not in being heard, it's in being remembered. 8. Creating your own values. The ultimate outsmarting. Nietzsche's final lesson is this: the greatest way to outsmart others is not by beating them at their values, but by creating your own. Most people argue endlessly over morality, politics, status, fighting in the same tiny arena. But Nietzsche's higher man steps out of the arena. He creates new rules, new meanings, new paths. That is why his silence is so powerful. He doesn't need to fight the old battles, because he's already living in a new world. This is the ultimate outsmarting. To live so boldly, so authentically, that no one can even compete with you, because you've transcended their game entirely. 9. How to apply this in daily life. Let's make it practical. Practice deliberate silence. Don't rush to answer. Pause. Let others reveal themselves. Master your body language. Straight posture, calm breathing, steady gaze. Let your presence speak. Detach from approval. Remind yourself, you don't need to be understood by everyone. Choose noble silence. Not fear, not avoidance, but confident restraint. Live with weight. Act as if every choice will echo forever. Let this silence guide your decisions. Create your own values. Don't argue over the herd's morality. Build your own, and live it so strongly that silence becomes your proof. 10. Final words, the silent victory. So how do you outsmart anyone without saying a word? Not by tricks, not by manipulation, but by living as Nietzsche's higher individual. mastering yourself, refusing to be baited, projecting strength through silence, rising above the herd, living so authentically that your very being is an argument no one can defeat. In a world that shouts endlessly, the quiet man becomes unforgettable. In a world of noise, silence is the loudest power of all. Nietzsche would leave us with this: those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music. When you embody this silence, when you live as your own creation, you don't need to outsmart others in their game, because you've already won by playing a game they can't even understand. Outro call to action. And that is the end of our journey into Nietzsche's wisdom. If you've made it this far, remember, the greatest way to outsmart anyone is not with words, but with presence, silence, and self-mastery. If this message resonated, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and join us next time as we explore more timeless philosophies that can change the way you live forever.